In the summer of 1975, at the packed Las Vegas International Hotel, something unprecedented happened that would define Elvis Presley's character forever. Mid-performance, during his iconic "Can't Help Falling in Love," the king of rock and roll suddenly stopped singing, dropped his microphone, and leaped off the stage into the audience. What happened next wasn't scripted, wasn't rehearsed, and certainly wasn't expected, but it revealed the true heart of the man behind the legend. This is the story of the night Elvis proved that being the king meant caring for his people, even if it meant stopping the show. The Las Vegas International Hotel buzzed with electricity on August 15, 1975. Elvis Presley, draped in his white jumpsuit adorned with golden eagles, commanded the stage with the magnetism that had captivated millions for 2 decades. The audience of 2,000 hung on every word, every hip sway, every curl of his famous lip. This was Elvis in his element, the consummate performer who could make each person in that vast room feel like he was singing directly to them. The evening had started like any other Vegas show. Elvis opened with C.C. Ryder, his voice rich and powerful, filling every corner of the showroom. The crowd erupted with each familiar song. Women threw scarves and flowers, men cheered, and cameras flashed despite the no photography policy. Colonel Parker watched from the wings, calculating profits, while the Memphis Mafia stood guard, ensuring everything ran smoothly. By the time Elvis reached the middle of his set, sweat glistened on his forehead under the hot stage lights. Had just finished a rousing rendition of Hound Dog when he noticed something in the crowd. His keen performer's eye, trained to read every face in the audience, caught sight of a commotion near the front row. A middle-aged woman appeared to be slumping forward in her seat, her husband frantically trying to support her. Elvis paused between songs, his brow furrowing with concern. The band, accustomed to his improvisational style, waited for his cue. But instead of launching into the next number, Elvis moved closer to the edge of the stage, peering into the audience. The woman's distress was becoming more apparent. She was clearly having some kind of medical episode. Without hesitation, Elvis made a decision that would shock everyone in attendance. He was about to prove that the title King meant more than just musical royalty. It meant having a king's heart for his people. Hold on, Elvis said into his microphone, his voice cutting through the confused murmur of the crowd. The music stopped abruptly. 2,000 people fell silent, unsure of what was happening. Elvis set his microphone down on the stage, and in one fluid motion, jumped down into the audience. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as Elvis made his way through the tables and chairs toward the distressed woman. His white jumpsuit, worth thousands of dollars and weighing nearly 40 pounds with its intricate beadwork, seemed suddenly insignificant compared to his mission. Security scrambled to follow him, but Elvis was already kneeling beside the woman's chair. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Elvis asked gently, his famous voice now soft and concerned. The woman, Margaret Collins from Ohio, was having what appeared to be a severe panic attack, possibly complicated by a heart condition. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, and she was clearly disoriented. Her husband, Robert, looked helpless and terrified. "She's been so excited about tonight," Robert stammered. To Elvis, "This is her dream come true, meeting you. Maybe it was just too much." Elvis placed his hand on Margaret's shoulder and began speaking to her in the soothing tones that had comforted millions through his music. "It's okay, honey. I'm right. Here. Just breathe with me, all right? In and out, nice and slow." His presence seemed to have an immediate calming effect. The king of rock and roll had become something even more powerful, a healer. Meanwhile, the entire showroom watched in stunned silence as their entertainment became something far more meaningful. This wasn't a performance anymore. This was humanity at its finest, displayed on the grandest stage. As Elvis continued to comfort Margaret, someone in the audience had called for medical assistance. But rather than waiting for paramedics, Elvis took charge of the situation with a tenderness that surprised even his closest associates. He remained, crouched beside Margaret's chair, holding her hand and speaking to her as if they were old friends rather than superstar and fan. "You know what, Margaret?" Elvis said, having learned her name from her husband. "You remind me of my mama. She used to get overwhelmed sometimes, too. But you're strong, just like she was." His voice carried the warmth of his Southern upbringing, and gradually, Margaret's breathing began to normalize. The audience watched in reverent silence as Elvis began to softly sing "Love Me Tender," not the full production version, but an intimate, a cappella rendition that seemed to create a protective bubble around Margaret and her husband. His voice, stripped of all amplification and staging, was pure and healing. Several audience members later reported that they had tears streaming down their faces, witnessing this display of genuine compassion. When the paramedics finally arrived, Elvis stood up but didn't immediately return to the stage. Instead, he helped them assess Margaret's condition and made sure she was stable before they transported her to the hospital. He gave Robert his personal phone number, something he rarely did, and made him promise to call with updates on Margaret's condition. "The show can wait," Elvis told his bewildered band and management team. "Some things are more important than entertainment." Only after the ambulance had left the building did Elvis finally return to the stage. But he didn't immediately resume the concert. Instead, he stood at the microphone, looking out at his audience with a different expression than when the evening had begun. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis began, his voice carrying a weight it hadn't possessed earlier that evening. "What we just witnessed together was more important than any song I could ever sing. That beautiful lady reminded me why I do what I do. It's about connection. It's about caring for each other." The audience erupted in applause, but it wasn't the typical screaming adoration of a rock concert. This was something deeper: respect, admiration, and love for a man who had just shown them what true character looked like. Elvis had revealed himself not just as an entertainer, but as a human being of extraordinary compassion. When Elvis resumed the show, everything felt different. His performance was more intimate, more connected. He dedicated "How Great Thou Art" to Margaret, and his rendition was so powerful that many in the audience later said it was the most moving performance they had ever witnessed. The spiritual resonance of the song, combined with what had just transpired, created an almost sacred atmosphere in the showroom. Throughout the rest of the evening, Elvis frequently checked with security for updates on Margaret's condition. When word came that she was stable and would recover fully, he shared the news with the audience, who cheered as if their favorite team had just won the championship. The concert ran nearly an hour longer than scheduled, but no one complained. Elvis seemed energized by the earlier events, as if helping Margaret had reminded him of why he had been given his incredible gifts. He closed the show with "Can't Help Falling in Love," the song he had been performing when Margaret's medical emergency began, but now it carried new meaning. As the final notes faded and Elvis took his bows, everyone in the room knew they had been part of something special. This wasn't just another Vegas show. It was a testament to the character of a man who could have easily continued performing while someone else handled the emergency, but instead chose compassion over commerce. Margaret Collins recovered fully and remained a devoted Elvis fan until her passing in 2003. She often told the story of the night the king of rock and roll stopped his show for her, always emphasizing that it wasn't about her. It was about the kind of man Elvis truly was. That August night in Las Vegas became legendary, not for the music, but for the humanity displayed under the bright lights of show business. Ready to discover more untold stories about the real Elvis Presley? Subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive Tales of the king's generosity, kindness, and the moments that made him more than just a legend. They made him a man worth remembering. Click here to join thousands of Elvis fans who love the stories behind the music.